So not only do the Halls sell freezer beef, which is really great to have that local connection, but with them backgrounding and raising calves and cattle and having multiple pieces of the life cycle, it also shines a light on the fact that even when you're buying commodity beef or beef from the grocery store or just not directly from a farm, you're still impacting a farm family. And with cattle changing hands so many times, you're impacting multiple farm families, no matter what beef you're purchasing.
Welcome to the Eat Y'all podcast, where we discuss the struggles and successes of the farmers, food producers, and chefs who are working to get better ingredients into restaurants today and to ensure their availability in the future.
This episode of the Eat Y'all podcast is made possible through a partnership with the Kentucky Beef Council, an organization working for the cattle producers of Kentucky in areas of promotion, education, and research. Learn more at kybeef.com. That's kybeef.com.
Another week, another bit of information about beef. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm always fired up to talk about beef, and Mariana joins me today on the Eat Y'all podcast to help set up this next episode. I'm your host, Andy Chapman. Welcome, Mariana. It's good to be back.
Hey there. It is good to be back.
And we were in New York last week, right?
That's right. And then you went up to Kentucky recently. Is that correct?
Yep. So we were outside of a town called Georgetown, Kentucky. There's no Georgetown University in Georgetown, Kentucky, by the way. That's a whole different place. We were on a farm called Hallstead Farms with a farmer, Amanda Hall. And the second podcast we did is Amanda, Chef Justin Thompson, and Chef Johnny Streetman. So we did two podcasts, one where we're cruising around the farm and learning about their operation, a little bit more about factory farms and all sorts of things.
I love these around the farm ones. I think they're really cool. All the sounds from the farm are really fun. And so you had two chefs join you on the farm tour. Tell me more about these guys.
We did. So we had Justin Thompson. He's been on the podcast before. You'll hear more about him on the second episode as he actually cooks us lunch. And we get to go to his restaurant down there in Georgetown. But our new friend, Johnny Streetman, joined us for this adventure. And Johnny actually was connected to us through another chef friend, Phil Cronin, who's been on the podcast as well. And Johnny's got a company called Lex Chef. And it's one of the neatest concepts, basically feeding people wherever they are with special dinners he works with people like Buffalo Trace, Castle and Key. He's been at the apiary in Lexington. So he's done all these amazing things, but basically the concept that Johnny has is he takes great, amazing food to wherever you are and cooks these awesome dinners. And it really gives him flexibility. And he talks a little bit about that on our second episode about having a family life and being a chef that's doing great food.
Well, we love that. So what do y'all cover in this episode?
So we've been doing the deep dive here. We've been doing the deep dive.
The beef dive?
Yes, the deep dive on beef, knee deep in beef. And we've discussed a lot of things with the farms we've covered so far. But I think the Hallstead farm, we're literally walking around part of their farm. It's 220 acres. And Amanda tells us this is a factory farm with the air quotes around it, which you can see. Our readers, our listeners cannot. But she basically described them feeding out 100 and something feeder steers.
And was that what you expected from a factory farm? Like, explain what it looked like.
Well, it was Kentucky. It's this piece of land. It's surrounded by horse farms all around it. So horse farms in Kentucky and this part of Kentucky, everybody's got beautiful fences. Okay.
It's a stunning area. We've driven through there a few times.
Yeah. So really amazing. Beautiful green grass everywhere. And the grass the cattle were walking around in, they had already chewed the tops down, was still halfway up your calf. It was amazing. There was no brown anywhere. They talk a lot about rotational grazing and how they actually move the cattle from spot to spot around the farm. Amanda's going to talk about that some. We didn't get to talk about one thing as in depth as I wanted to, but they had, and we talked about this kind of in transit, and I really should have recorded more, but it was just a little, sometimes there's a lot of extra noise going on these. So
yeah,
they took a aerial photo of the land that they were going to farm, I guess around the time they bought it, and sketched out okay, this is where we're going to put fences. This is how we're going to do it. And there's like this chute that's like interstate. It's the I-10 corridor, right? Or for us, it'd be the I-10 corridor. And so all these different fields have on-ramps that they can just pop open a gate, move the cattle to the chute that goes all the way to their kind of barn area, where Amanda's going to talk about,
So basically they built a lane down the middle of their farms. They didn't separate the pastures by a single fence. They built a lane that the cows could move from paddock to paddock, so to speak,
right
down the middle.
And they can even graze that lane because it's all, it's just
grass.
Yeah.
I love that.
They do a lot of things that were well thought out. And Amanda talks about part of this. You'll hear she's doing a lot of this herself, and she's, just a lady,
a person, like
just
me.
a person.
Yes.
She's just a woman who's, not trying to be the Incredible Hulk. She's just.
And this is a multi-generation family farm operation, right?
Right.
I mean, let's just jump in and hear what Amanda has to share with us about this so-called factory farm up in Kentucky.
And you'll hear from Amanda, you'll hear from Caitlin Hawkins from the Kentucky Beef Council, and Chef Johnny Streetman and Chef Justin Thompson on this episode. So when we arrived at the farm, Amanda Hall tells us a little bit about her story and how she and her husband Reed started this farm. Caitlin Hawkins tells us a little about how the Beef Council works and introduces us to Amanda Hall and Hallstead Farms.
Life story. But so Amanda works pretty closely with us. She's a member of our Kentucky Beef Council committee. So the Beef Council is responsible for utilizing the beef checkoff dollars in the state of Kentucky. Essentially, every head of cattle that's sold, $2 of that transaction comes off in our state. We keep $1.50 here for promotion, education, things like this. We do some research for the beef industry, and then 50 cents goes into a federal program, which is the Beef It's What's for Dinner brand is one of the contractors of that federal program. So we work very closely with some of our farmers here, and Amanda graciously opened up her farm for us today. She's from Georgetown, extensive background in the beef industry, multi-generational beef operator.
Grad 2009.
Yep. And then her husband Reed is from Louisville, correct?
Yep, he is.
And they farm here in Scott County with their daughter Charli, who just turned 1 not too long ago.
So, all fun stuff. And my dad, he's a cattle broker. He owns the cattle farm on both sides of 62, right across the interstate. So he's a cattle broker. I also work at his office full time too, managing the truckers, the invoicing of cattle, paying, all the cattle stuff. So everything from buying cattle from Virginia, West Virginia, Georgia, and shipping them out to the feed yards west, we kind of deal with in that sense too.
So you sent me the address, that's where I thought we were going.
Well, you would have found me. Yeah. So I was there this morning before I came here. So
I know where I'm going. They sent me the address. It's like it's not where I was going.
Yes, the big cow sign at the end of the driveway. So anyways, you still would have found me. If you want to tour that place, I'd be happy to take you on one as well.
There you go.
So also involved in the community, mother on our stuff.
About your farm here in Kentucky.
Yes, my husband and I, Reed, we actually farm here in Georgetown, Scott County, Kentucky. And I grew up on a beef farm and multi-generational. And my dad, he's a cattle broker. I grew up showing cattle in 4-H and FFA. And then whenever Reed and I met in college, we kind of had this dream together that we wanted to start our own cow-calf operation. So about 7 or 8 years ago, we decided to purchase our first group of 16 bred heifers, and everybody thought we were crazy. And guess what? We were, because if you know anything about heifers, you know that they need a lot of assistance and care when they're having their first baby. So we learned a whole lot that first year together. And from then, we've kind of expanded our farming operation to where we background feeder steers. And that's kind of the middle place between the cow-calf operation and then going out west to the feed yards. So we grow them on grass throughout the year, usually the summertime, and get them a little bit bigger. And we still maintain the cow-calf operation. We run about 110 cow-calves now, and we'll do probably around 250 feeder steers throughout the year. And speaking with our friends and family around the community, people kept reaching out to us about, hey, can we buy some beef from you? And we knew that there was a little bit of a market for it, so we decided to start selling local beef. We've been doing it for about 4 years now, but recently we've really expanded to selling beef boxes and promoting it and getting more out and involved in the community. So we've kind of just expanded to all enterprises, if you would say, of the beef industry.
Like a vertical, what do they call that? Vertical integration?
Vertical integration, yeah. Because every animal in the beef industry is sold 2.5 times in its life, and I feel like we really capture a whole lot of that animal's lifestyle.
So explain what you mean with the 2.5 times.
So yes, so the beef industry is actually one of the only industries that is sold from producer, like the poultry industry. It is vertically integrated, where Tyson owns the chicken from beginning till end, and they just kind of contract the producer out. But with the cattle industry, we actually have the cow-calf producer. The cow-calf producer then sells to a backgrounder, who then gets the calf a little bit bigger, and then the backgrounder will sell out west to the feed yard, where they get the animal up to finished weight, and then they sell it to a packer. So the animal is sold multiple times throughout its lifetime.
And then the packer sells it back to
the consumer.
Or a distributor, maybe.
Right, a distributor. And so then at each time, there's a different exchange of hands each life cycle throughout the animal. What Reed and I have tried to do here is with the cow-calf operation, we actually then keep the calves and we background them. So we kind of absorb their life cycle for the first 2 years of their life until they're ready to go out to the feed yard.
And so from the moment they drop, it's 24 months, basically?
Around an animal's life cycle for a beef animal is around 18 to 24 months. And so that's when they get to their finished desired weight of probably around 1,500 pounds.
Caitlin Hawkins talks about how integral the farm families are to the beef process, even with commodity beef.
So not only do the Halls sell freezer beef, which is really great to have that local connection, but with them backgrounding and raising calves and cattle and having multiple pieces of the life cycle, it also shines a light on the fact that even when you're buying commodity beef or beef from the grocery store or just not directly from a farm, you're still impacting a farm family. And with cattle changing hands so many times, you're impacting multiple farm families, no matter what beef you're purchasing, which is kind of the theme of today's venture and outlook in the podcast.
Well, and we can maybe dig into this a little bit more over lunch too, but talk about, the sort of the animal welfare and these cattle are passed, it's not like you always take one and raise it all the way up. So talk about the process of transferring cattle and what that looks like. How do you know as a consumer, that you've got the best possible product at the end? What's the process for that?
We're lucky here, at least in the U.S., that we have the safest and best food supply. And what is great, too, is that actually over 99% of all the cattle come from a family farm, just like Reed and I, just like the farm that I grew up on, just like my sister's farm. It's just they're cattle producers trying to do the best that they can. Even the feed yards, majority of them are family owned. And so what we do is we're BQA certified, beef quality assurance. And that's what a lot of producers around the central Kentucky area and even further scope than that. But we learn the practices on the best handling methods to give their vaccinations. We learn the best handling methods on when we're getting them up to either, work them for their wormer or their shots, or whenever we're transporting them to where they have the less stress, the best environment, and that makes it the most efficient way for them to kind of move in the most natural way for them. And that's what Reed and I, we put a lot of effort into designing our farm and our facility to where it makes sense kind of where cattle would naturally go. And that's what a lot of producers kind of do, because we try to be sustainable in everything that we do, economically, environmentally, and sustainability for the community, and also to preserve our land to make sure that it keeps producing for generations and generations. But then also, of course, we economically sustainable, because whatever we do, it goes back to the community. We're helping people out, paying some people to help us out, and that money, it stays in the community, it stays here.
One of our chefs on the trip, Johnny Streetman, who you'll hear from later in this episode, talks about his journey as we ride around the farm.
I was the AM sous chef at 21C for a couple of years.
Yep.
And it just kind of, life's all about timing, so.
Sure.
I had a good buddy who I'd worked with at the apiary who was starting to get a little too busy with like 8, 10, 12, 14 3-course dinners for, that amount of people. And next thing you know, we just decided to combine forces.
That's awesome.
So we have clients kind of all over Lexington, horse farms around, and we do buffalo trace dinners out there and lunches.
Very cool.
And most recently, we just picked up Castle and Key, so we're going to start doing some stuff out there.
One of the things that we'll hear a lot about from modern cattle farmers is rotational grazing. While it's a fancy name, basically it means the cows don't eat in the same field for days and days and days in a row. They move around, and there's a lot of benefits for that.
It's 210 acres. And so what we got in a pickle last year and the year before where we had our cow-calves on rented farms. And we decided, because, one gentleman, he decided to let his son farm, which, that's totally allowed. And then the other gentleman, he passed away and the farm got sold. We're in a pickle to where we're like, do we sell our cows or what do we do with them? Because, cows, they're a large investment, and that's something that you really don't want to get rid of because we've spent a lot of time, many years, in building the genetics of our herd and putting a lot of effort into them. So with cross fencing and rotational grazing, Reed and I, we decided we have cow-calves on our farm and feeder steers. So we're really making this place work and utilize it to the best that we can. So in this field, let's see, I just saw a couple. So we use the first half of the farm for the cow-calves. Right here, what you see, this isn't your traditional grass. It's actually called sorghum Sudan grass, and we plant it, and sometimes people, they bale it for wet hay or dry hay, but we actually planted it, and we're letting the cows flash graze it. And so then it can grow back really quickly, so then they have a great nutritious source. So it gives us a little bit of an extra field, but more forage kind of for them. And so they're back here. We turned them in here on Saturday, and they are loving every bit of it. So rotational grazing is key because...
So the tops of the grass that you see kind of almost like it's been bush hogged, that's them taking the tops off?
Yeah.
They're eating those tops, like Amanda was saying, and then this Sudan grass will grow back, and they'll get a better grow out of it.
Mm-hmm. And she's actually one, too. We raised her, and we've turned her back into a cow. So she's one that we've had from literally beginning to end and raising her calves now.
Kentucky is, I don't know if you said this in the beginning, but Kentucky's a cow-calf state, so we raise a lot of babies here in our state. Some of them stay, not a lot of them stay. A lot of them go out to a different state or just a different complete operation, but we're known as a cow-calf state here, and what a lot of producers will do is keep their best heifer calves and retain ownership on them, keep them within their herd for their genetics. Tons of records can be kept around cattle, just like you guys have to keep records in your businesses and your operations. They keep records on everything, so they'll note, did she breed back? Did she have a calf? Did she have twins? If she had a calf, was she a good mother? If she's just a straight paint, she'll probably end up at the stockyard.
Yep.
Just looking for all of those things. Temperament is another thing that's hereditary. So do they have docility? Because you're going to want a good nurturing mother, and you're going to want good carcass merit coming from your bulls as well and your maternal lines to make a good beef animal.
Mm-hmm. And as you can tell for us, good, calm, docile cows, that's kind of key for us, because if you're scared to be around them, or if, my daughter's scared to be around them, it's not worth it. I mean, look at these cows. They're just hanging out right here next to us, and they're not scared one bit. So number 14 that I showed you, actually number 80, she's this last girl right here. That's her daughter as well. So you kind of learn and know the numbers and know who belongs to who, and you can actually start seeing the similarities between them, and it's kind of cool to watch them grow and see how they become moms and take care of things. And
so what predicts whether they're going to be docile and good or not? Or is it just is there genetics to that, or are there some of them high-strung genetically?
Yeah, I'd say especially breeds. Some breeds are known to be a little bit more high-strung than other breeds, and also genetically too. And how the producer handles them as well is a big thing, because if you come out here and you're calm with them, then they start to gain that trust. They know you, they feel comfortable around you. Where if you're not so calm, then they get scared of you and they run away. Or if they never see the producer or their farmer, they don't know you, so they run for the hills. And so I think it all plays a part in a triangle. Like, you have to have good management skills, good husbandry skills, but you also have to have the good genetic makeup and the breed makeup.
Would you say that could definitely affect the flavor of the meat?
I think so, because if an animal is more high-tensed and, stressed out, then that meat, it's going to be a lot more tense. There's hormones that get released that...
When you think about, like, the process of Wagyu,
right?
And they're literally getting massaged. And
exactly, and cuddled and sung to.
Getting fed sake on low doses. And
there's tons of, research out there just on that, where it says if you've got more volatile cattle, then that their muscles are contracting the whole time that they're on the farm or things like that, and you're going to get darker. You're going to get what they call a dark cutter. So that lean's not going to be bright cherry red. It'll be more of like a deeper red or a purplish, and then you're going to get increased shear force, which is that tenderness value, and it'll just be a horrible eating experience for you guys. But one of the great things for the beef industry that's come about is beef quality assurance. And then in Kentucky, we take it a step further with cattle handling and care, which is a program that farmers can go through to be certified in quality assurance and cattle handling and care to make sure that they're implementing good production practices on their farm. And the hulls are BQA trained and certified and all of that. So
that's a pretty big process, right? BQA.
It is. It's a 12 to 14 section piece where you have to take quizzes, you have to watch videos, you have to do practices, you have to learn, everything from just handling an animal to giving a shot to, just how to load animals properly and how to kind of treat them how they want to be treated.
She talked about her handling facilities, and there's tons of research and studies and things that people tweak and adjust for just those handling facilities. So cattle move through them. Obviously, they're going down a little bit of a tunnel, so they may not want to go right away, but helping them move easier through some of those scenarios to then give vaccines or put tags in. You see all these cows have a tag in their ear, and that's the identifying piece for Amanda and Reed to be able to know who's who and track their genetics and just keep up to date on them.
And see kind of how cow 78 there, look next to her, that's her calf. So that's B78, and his birthday is written above. That's how we identify our calves, because that's a bull calf and his mom's number and his birthday. And so we'll do bull calves, we tag them in the right ears, and then heifer calves, we tag them in the left ears. So that kind of just helps us identify, the different sexes when we're either sorting them or just looking in a field. It helps make it a little bit easier for us, and then we can also help us keep better records, because we're like, hey, 78 raised a great calf. So, or if we see a calf that's not so good and a cow's raised a puny calf 2 years in a row, we say, well, maybe this cow needs to be culled because she's not really producing up to our standard. Yeah, he's a big dude. He's probably around 400 pounds, and that's the semi in him. You see the muscle that he has, the round curvature to his booty there and his shoulder, and how nice and long he is. You can kind of see how that loin is going to develop, and he's just going to be a stout boy. I take pride in our boys, can't you tell? So, anyways, but he's one too. So all these bull calves and these heifers, we will actually keep them for another year or so and get them a little bit bigger, and we'll kind of finish them out to where they get sold to the feed yard. So we'll see them grow from here to where the steers you're about to see next. Now, before we actually had wheat in this little area, and we'd let them in here to graze the wheat. So we're kind of using it as a good cover crop to give them a little extra nutrition and forage.
Do you freeze brand too?
Or
hot brand?
Some of our cows, the fall herd, we got in a pickle and we didn't know where to send our cows, so we actually rented a farm in Fleming County, so they would summer in Fleming County. So we branded them when they were going down there, just in case.
Are there still cattle rustlers?
There are. You don't hear about it as much because that takes a lot of skill kind of and facilities, and you have to be pretty tricky to do it. But if you brand your cattle and if your brand's registered, it's a whole lot harder to take it to the stockyards itself. There's not a whole lot of theft going on, but you also have to have a lot of guts to do it, honestly. I feel like that'd go back to the wild, wild west. You know, like
stealing from Target.
Yeah. Well, now you've got like gates and fence. And the day and age of security cameras.
Right. And good neighbors. Our neighbors are pretty on top of things.
Hi, everyone. It's Mariana, and let's talk beef for just a minute. It's been informative and eye-opening to visit beef operations with chefs over the past couple of years, and that all started with our friends at the Kentucky Beef Council. One thing we've learned is that a lot of thought and care goes into raising beef with superior flavor, texture, and nutrition. I want to put the best in my body in terms of flavor and nutrition, and I bet you do too. Hopefully these episodes help you be confident to choose beef more often. Thoughtfully sourcing your food makes a big difference to your health and to the sustainability of producers like those in the Kentucky Beef Council who work hard every day to bring only the best to your plate.
Amanda Hall talks more about rotational grazing on their Kentucky beef farm.
With rotational grazing, you're actually able to keep the grass growing because it's kind of like cutting your hair. You know, like the more you cut it, the more it grows. So
what kind of grass is this that we're driving through?
So this is just a good mixed grass. It's mixed orchard grass, a little bit of Timothy. There's actually a little bit of Johnson grass in here. We'll probably move them in about another 2 days. But unlike the cows, these steers, they get fed every day. We feed them a mix between gluten pellets, cracked corn, and soy hull pellets. It's a 3-way feed, and we also put a little distillers in it. And we just figured out that this ration, it really helps them grow, put on the pounds, because where we're running 140 steers on just 5 fields, we're able to increase their weight quicker, and we're able to utilize the grass more, where if they were just strictly grass-fed, we wouldn't be able to keep this many cattle and be able to rotate them at.
So they usually stay kind of bunched up together as a team working on the grass?
They do. It's usually cattle are herd animals, so they usually kind of follow along together, and you know something's always off with an animal whenever they don't come up to feed. So that's kind of a good telltale sign if something's up, because you know if you don't want to eat dinner, something's not right.
Yeah.
They go and buy the slop from all the distilleries and they feed it to the cattle. It's something we've thought about doing, but from where it's so perishable, you have to pretty much have somebody on the road every day going to the distilleries getting that slop, and that's a pretty big time commitment, to drive an hour each way.
Absolutely.
So for us, though, the distillers, the byproduct of that, it's what gives the cattle this really shiny look to them. And it makes a difference in their coat, their appearance, and their growth. So these steers here, we've had them for about 2 months now, and we'll probably be selling them. We shoot to sell them when they're around 850, 875 pounds. So as you can tell, they're a lot of bigger boys, like that guy there. This guy's getting pretty big. And so we'll get all these guys up. We'll truck them over to the office, sort them, weigh them up, and we can probably get rid of a load. And then we only have 60 steers here. So we're able to kind of keep the group fresh and keep the group growing.
You purchased this load of steers?
We did, yes. All of our boys that we have raised from last year, they have been shipped with the first round that we did about 6 weeks ago.
How many pounds of feed that you all provide do they consume a day versus just grazing, do you think?
They eat probably about 5 pounds per head per day of the feed is what they eat. And then grass, honestly, I can't tell you the truth what their ratio is, but I know they eat a ton of grass, because when we've just done primarily grass cattle here and rotating fields, cattle grow great on grass. They're designed to eat grass. That's what their, their mouth, their teeth are designed for, and the feed is a good supplement. But without the grass, they would not grow or do as well. That's why producers out west love Kentucky cattle, because they love grass.
Yeah.
And I may have missed it. So you said you were taking them in the 800-pound range, but when you guys bought them, what were they at?
They were around 650 pounds. So we put about 200 pounds on them. So we shoot for them to gain between 3 and 4 pounds a day. And if they're just strictly on grass, they're only probably making about 2.5 pounds a day. So that's where that feed makes that extra difference. The time too to get a grass-fed animal to, finished weight, that's a lot older of an animal. It takes more time, and the older the animal is, the tougher the meat kind of. It's not as tender, not as flavorful. So like we say, we always tell our people that we are grass-fed, grain-finished.
Gotcha.
And we supplement with grain kind of throughout. And if you think the grain that they get, it's natural for cattle to eat it too, because it's just corn, soybeans. It's, all the roughage that they still love to eat.
Well, and you bring up a good point, because I feel like there's a huge misconception out there that if you're grain finishing an animal, then that's all you've ever pumped into them. It's just grain. But all cattle start out on grass, and they spend the majority of their lifetime on grass. So, which is why pasture management is so important, especially like here in our state with Kentucky's rolling hills and all that stuff, and why like Reed and Amanda put so much thought into rotational grazing, the Sudan grass that they're letting them top off, all that stuff. It all plays together.
Sure. And like you would say right now, what they would consider or trying to pass or trying to get the word out, right now this would be considered a factory farm with the numbers and the acres.
Yeah.
Does it feel like a factory? They look pretty happy, don't they? And that's wild to me, because right here, this is how they're designed to live and designed to be.
Yep.
And honestly, a better life too, because they get fresh grass every week. And they don't have to walk far, because how we have this farm set up is they don't have to walk far to water at a lot of areas, because these fields are smaller and their water source is not far away from wherever they are, as opposed to having a huge 60-acre field and you have one water tank all the way in the far corner where they have to walk, 300-400 feet, 1,000 feet, to water, because that's exhausting for an animal.
By the time you get back, you're thirsty again.
Exactly, yeah. Because, sometimes people, they have their shade over here, but their water tank's way up there, because that's what made sense for the water lines. Well, like you say, by the time you get from the shade to the water and then back, you're thirsty again.
Talk about the water you guys use here. Is it natural, like creek fed, or?
We actually use city water here. We do have a creek that runs through here, and we have a pond over there. We're actually refinishing our pond, but recently we fenced off our pond to where cattle cannot get in there, so we can preserve that pond, because they slowly started walking out the dam and breaking it down. And so, you don't want, in that pond, it leaches over to a creek. And so just to keep the creek clean and the water clean in Scott County, that's what we try to do. And we have our creek fenced off right there, and we'll flash graze that for about 5 days. Is all the cattle are on it as their water source for that field, but they aren't on it for a long period of time. It's only 3 to 5 days at a time. Right here we just got our concrete pad for our chute and our alleyway. And first and foremost is we wanted something safe, because working cattle can be very dangerous sometimes, because you have a large 1,400-pound cow, 1,800-pound bull, in a small space. If they don't feel comfortable, we don't want to get hurt, and we don't want them to get hurt. So it's about the cattle safety and our safety first and foremost. We purchased this silencer chute. It's a used chute, but what's nice about it, it's going to be set up on hydraulics. So instead of a manual chute and having to use the force with every animal pulling down, this is something that I can do by myself. Or when my daughter starts getting older, she can start learning how to help and work cattle. You just use little hydraulic levers here. It opens up the head gate. You can squeeze them in, make them feel more comfortable. And it makes it safer, too, for our vet when you're preg checking, because you can just open up this pouch cage here and the vet's safer as well whenever they're preg checking, which makes it nicer. And then back here we purchased this single double alleyway, and this is something, it was probably a little bit of a splurge, but with county investment money we were able to purchase it. They helped reimburse some of it. So we have a double alleyway system that goes to a single, so it's kind of like cattle merging. So you're able to hold more cattle in a line essentially, so then you can kind of worm their backs, maybe take ear tags out, do a little bit of the pre-working stuff before they get to the chute. But then they just feel cozy, they can't go anywhere, and you're safer too because you're not chasing so many cattle. They're confined, they're in their working pens. So that's something that we just wanted, something safe. You know, that's first and foremost. The safety for the animal, safety for us, for handlers, for people coming and helping us out. Because without safety, you're kind of SOL.
Yeah. Do they ever react, like get upset after like standing on concrete since they're just so used to?
No, not really. And you see this concrete's kind of a little bit rougher. And we're going to put shavings down or a mat. So they're not really going to be able to tell the difference kind of between, you know, the grass, gravel, or the concrete. Now, sometimes, like a show animal or something, like going up on a clean concrete pad, like to a wash, you know, they do get a little skeptical. But something like this, the cattle, they don't really even have a time to think about it, you know. Or if you're moving fields and if there's a piece of PVC pipe because there's an electric fence, you know, cattle sometimes don't like to cross that. But with this in an area, they might not really even have time to see that or think about it. Because with this, we want to make sure to work them quickly and efficiently. And having a hydraulic chute, having a good solid alleyway system, that's what you can do as opposed to it all being manual and only being able to work one animal at a time. And it takes 5 minutes per animal. The key is you want to be able to move them.
Yeah. When you're going through 100 of them.
Yeah, it adds up quickly. Well, in the heat, the time that they're out in the heat, the stress level, it all makes a difference.
Yeah.
And so then you can see here what we have. Pins that they're getting ready to put up where a calf comes and they're going to take a left here and you go through 3 sets of sorting pins where you can hold animals and then veer off to go into the alleyway is kind of how it'll be set up. And then right here is our loadout area. And so right here, as you can tell, of course, it's tall again. It's steel. They're not going to get out. But each one of these cut gates, we actually have them crisscross. So then as you move them closer to the gooseneck, you move them up closer. And with the crisscrossing, you're taking a gate here, closing it here, then your next gate's already over here, so you don't have to backtrack.
You don't have to rework them again.
Exactly. And then they don't have that, you know, the zigzag method, they don't see that line of sight to run past you. So it kind of just slowly encourages them up. And how we get them out of the field, we have our double alleyway that ends there. And see this big silver gate? It cuts across the driveway. And so they just make a left-hand turn straight up here and they go. So it's a pretty, as you can tell, it makes sense how things would move. It's not, there's no huge 180 degree turns, no huge 90 degrees. It just has a nice flow to it. And we've done everything from steers, cows, sick animals, bulls, and we've never had any problem with how they move to get up into the loading alley. But see, a lot of people, they can't justify farming full time on both accounts, you know, like in both households. And so somebody has to work off farm. But luckily, my job off farm, it really correlates well with what we do here on the farm. So it's a nice partnership that we kind of have with, you know, my job and here, because we buy our cattle through the office, sell through the, you know, so it's a good partnership and benefits us both. And then I get to hang out with you guys too.
Thanks for listening to the Eat Y'all podcast. We're going to leave you with some audio of Amanda Hall calling the girls up in the pasture for our interview. Hope you enjoyed this episode.
Woo! You just have to talk to them a little bit.
The ladies are coming for you.
It's pretty incredible how you can just call them out, isn't it?
It's so neat.
You've been listening to the Eat Y'all podcast, hosted by Eat Y'all founder and Chief Relationship Officer, Andy Chapman. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean the world to us if you'd join us in our mission to save family farms by subscribing and leaving a review. Even better, share this episode and follow us on your favorite social media account at Let's Eat Y'all.